In order, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. We have Supervisor Carper joining us on the phone this afternoon. Hopefully you're feeling a little better, Kent. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I would move it.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Dietrich. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Items 2 through 5 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items passed unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the March 17th, 2026 meeting. Item 3 is approval of claims. Item 4 for Board Administration Karen James is approval of resolution for a tax suspension for initials EW. Item 5 from Human Resources, Melissa Thomas. Item A is approval of a memorandum of personnel transactions. Item B is authorization to initiate the hiring process. And that is the end of the consent agenda, and I would move it.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Dietrich. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. All right, item 6, County Treasurer Tina Bertrand, is March property tax deadline and DCS applications.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. I discussed the same item last week as kind of citizen concern, just wanted to bring it again. We are 1 week away from the deadline. Come next Wednesday, 1.5% interest will be charged on any unpaid or delinquent taxes. I just want to put it out there again. March is the one that we do not send a statement out, so a lot of people miss it. So just kind of want to get it out there. And then again, to just reiterate that it needs to be postmarked if it's going to be mailed, must be postmarked with the post office name, dated March 31st. With all the changes with the post office, that was a huge issue in September. So this is really more for the benefit of our community and those who actually watch the videos or the YouTube sessions than it is, I think, for us here. But it is good to get it out there for everybody. And then the last thing with the DSC credit applications, that's for the low income over 75 disabled residents. We can take them for the current tax collections through March 31st of this year. So if anybody has any questions or anybody has one that they want to put in, if they think they're eligible, fill it out, we can take it. And we are also issuing the next one. The next cycle is also being issued right now as well. So I just wanted to put that out there for the community. Hopefully we won't have as much problems on April 1st like we did October 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. All right, item 7, Building Services, Kenny Schmitz. Item A is approval to set the courthouse freight elevator project public hearing date of March 31, 2026 at 4:40 p.m.
Yeah, this agenda item is to change the courthouse freight elevator project public hearing date, originally scheduled for March 24th. The local business that has to publish this was not able to do it or complete it in time. And so we'd like to reschedule that for a date of March 31st at 4:40 p.m.
Is that really what happened, or are you just thinking all the folks that are going to show up for our public meeting at 4 are going to stick around to talk about the elevator?
Oh, well, that could be it.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Then item B is to authorize the Building Services Department to open bid submissions on April 7th, 2026 at 3 p.m. in the County Courthouse Board office. They will receive bids April 7th, 2026 at 4:42 p.m. Board of Supervisors meeting room and approve contract with the lowest responsible bidder. Okay.
Yeah, so this item follows the hoops that are required by Iowa Chapter 26. sets the dates, times, and places to receive, open, and award the contract submissions, bid submissions. So yes, we're asking for a motion to authorize building services to open the bid submissions March 31st at 3 p.m. At the Woodbury County Board Office, Courthouse Board Office. Officially receive the bids that same day, March 31st, at 4:42 p.m. during the Board of Supervisors meeting, and approve the contract with the lowest responsible bidder at that time.
Is it March 31st or April 7th
That was just my,
that you're going to open the bids?
I stand corrected, it's April 7th. Thank you, Joshua. So I would ask that we change that motion to April 7th at 3 o'clock p.m.
well, that's how it reads in the agenda item is April 7th for both, April 7th at 3 o'clock to open bids, and then April 7th at 4:42 to receive the bids. The backup says 31st, okay. Yes, it does.
Can I recommend to take off the time from receiving the bids? I don't think it's necessary to have a specific time like that to receive the bids.
Agreed.
I'm in agreement if everyone else is, yes.
But April 7th is the correct day.
Yes.
Okay. So I would move approval striking the 4:42 set time to receive the bids, but everything else can remain.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Bittenger. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Pose same sign. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, and thanks,
Thanks,
Joshua,
Kenny.
for catching that.
Item 8 from Board Administration, Ryan Erickson, is approval of the participation form for the National Opioid Settlement 6 remnant defendants.
Yeah, a new national opioid settlement has been reached with 6 regional distributors, and all eligible entities must opt in to participate in this new settlement. And what the exact dollar amount is unknown at this moment, but in order to participate, we need to, a person with authority must sign and return the combined participation and release form.
Okay. And you're just looking for approval of that form?
Yes,
But the money doesn't go to you, it comes to Woodbury County, right?
yes,
Okay.
it does.
I just want to make sure.
Did you recently set up an LLC called Six Remnants Defendants?
No, I have not.
Okay. Just for the good of the public.
I don't want to go to jail.
All right. I would move approval.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Dietrich. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Pose same sign. Passes 5-0. Item 9, Ryan Erickson, budget review discussion for FY '27. This is a miscellaneous review of all the funds. I think you've got some paper for us. Move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Dietrich. All those in favor say aye.
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 Pose same sign. Passes 5-0. I want to give it to Josh.
And Michelle, I have it on my computer if you want to, or you can show the paper on. And what the summary is, this is by fund, the top level summary of where the current revenue budget expenditures and where the increase or decrease for each of general basic, general sup, rural basic, and then debt service. And then the highlighted blue is where the current budget stands in the, I'll say, increase or decrease. And then the purple is an estimate of where the reserve level, I mean, where a 20% reserve level would need to be. The middle, that for a general basic, that's the estimated cash at the end of the fiscal '27. So we would end up at the current budget for general basic would be $9,656,000, which would be about a 23% reserve level. But at the current budget, we would have a projected negative general supplement. And then rural basic would be about 10.5%. And that's where we stand as of right now. And I don't have anything more specific.
We can use the general basic reserves towards general sup, can't we?
Well, I would suggest the easiest way is the biggest expenditure out of general sup is the transfer to general basic to cover payroll benefits and other related. So you probably would lower that transfer, which would increase general sup, but would then decrease the balance in general basic. But at least that would prevent general supplement from going negative.
Sure. So let's talk about rural basic. We're negative 165,000. We've got to find a way to remedy that. So we can talk about a couple of the options that we have.
Well, I think there are three main options on that. Is number one, you could increase the levy rate to offset that negative. As I was examining, the property valuation for rural property only increased by about 1%. So the increase of tax revenue by keeping the levy same was only about $35,000. The increase in expenditures, it was about 2.4%, but it was about $90-some thousand. So that gap, last year we had a budgeted decrease of about 90-some thousand. So if the levies kept the same and the expenditures are kept the same, that increase would grow to 166. So one option would be to increase the levy. Another option, which I don't really, is to lower the transfer to secondary roads. But that, we have to still maintain a minimum local, and that combination is between the transfer and lost. And if we lower it too much, then we risk, not meeting that minimum amount. And then the third option is to decrease.
And if we don't make that minimum amount, we lose out on cost share. Is that right, Laura?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's not really, in my mind, a viable option. And then the third one is the lower expenditures. In the main area, there's several expenditures that we have no control over, like the rebate to CF Industries, the library, the landfill. Those are really, set by outside boards. So the one area would be rural patrol. And really that is just payroll. So those are really the three, I would say main options in rural basic.
Can we use gaming or local option sales tax to offset that? Michelle, I don't know if that was something we could do, or if you know.
I don't believe we've ever had payroll from gaming or local option sales tax.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been considered to fund one rural deputy out of general basic. If that reserve level is still above the 20%, that would shift the funds from rural to general basic, potentially.
That would be my preference. There's no set in stone rhyme or reason as to why a deputy is in one fund or another. And this is something we kind of balance when we need to, so.
Yeah, so then that would, help the real basic, but then would use more out of the general basic reserve.
Which it looks like if we were to cover all of general basic, which you have here, it gets us down to 23%. And then if we cover the general sup, that would knock us down to about 21%.
Yeah, Michelle, do you want to switch it to?
It isn't me.
I know my computer's updating, so can you show it on this?
How many times does that happen to you, where you get down here and it?
Extend it for 24 hours.
Well, another option is we just don't fill that vacant rural patrol. I mean, payroll is really our greatest issue with the increased cost. I mean, Ryan, you gave me the numbers. We have a $3 million increase for FY '27. 22.4 million of that is payroll, 80% of the increase, correct?
Well, in general basic.
In general basic, excuse me, right, in general basic.
Say that again, Dan.
So we have a $3 million increase in general basic for FY '27. 2.4 million is payroll. That's roughly 80%. I mean, so really, like we've said over the years, I mean, payroll is our greatest factor of trying to handle increases, health insurance premium, all that, benefits.
And
All
of that payroll, at least about 800,000 of it is just related to health insurance.
Right.
So that's why this year has a pretty significant, I'm gonna say payroll and payroll related increases this year.
Is that position vacant currently, Melissa?
The deputy?
Yeah,
Yeah, there is one deputy.
there is one that's open, okay.
How long has it been vacant?
That one almost since the beginning of March.
Okay.
What's the total dollars on that position, do you know?
It'd be about 125,000 with payroll and insurance all in.
Is there any background or reason why it hasn't been deauthorized at this point?
The deputy, they're looking. This deputy position I'm referring to is a resignation as of, I think it was March 4th or 5th. So there's no reason to authorize it. They're looking for a new list, the Civil Service Commission.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because if we don't hit the match with secondary roads and that 160,000 that we save might cost us $500,000 or more,
Correct.
so that's a bad trade.
Has anyone spoken to the sheriff's office about potentially not filling this position?
Not yet,
I'm not.
but the board wants me to. I don't mind reaching out.
I just found out today.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll reach, Chairman, if you want me to reach out, I will. To the sheriff or,
That's fine, Dan. I can too.
yeah. You can.
We can ask about it.
Sure.
Yeah, neither one of those are good options, but I mean, I think the one that I guess probably makes the most sense or whatever is, yeah, the position.
Freeze the position. And rural basic, what is that worth as far as levy rate? Is that like a 10 cents or?
Per 100,000, the levy rate would be 0.06118.
0.06118.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want, I do have another sheet here I could present that will show the impact on $100,000 for no change in levy and if we change the levy to cover this.
Sure. You got that on. Move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Dietrich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign, passes 5-0. Thank you, Michelle.
And if you move it up, so. Because the top part is general. Yeah, move it so. This is the rural basic. And last year, there's, the three factors in how it's calculated. Your assessed value, the rollback that equals a taxable value, and then the levy rate. And this is an example assuming $100,000, no change in assessed value. The last year's rollback was 47.4316. And so if this year's rollback is 44.5345. So on 100,000, if the levy did not change, if the levy did not change, the net impact on $100,000 of taxable value is actually a decrease of $27.59. Assessed value. If we had gone with the maximum levy rate of 11.2556, the increase on $100,000 would be 82.13. If we change the levy to balance, so increase it to get $165,000, the levy rate would be the 9.68, and it would be a $7.75 impact on $100,000 value residents, which I will stress that this doesn't mean everybody's situation is different. Will all depend on how your assessed value. And then the upper level is on the general side, and what I was doing there is showing the impact if we decided to cover the additional emergency medical services cost, because it shows you that the general levy rate was 7.118. So if no change and no change in your assessed value, it'd be a decrease of $20.60. But I don't think anybody had no change in their assessed value. If we went with a maximum rate to 7.3, the increase on $100,000 residents would be $9.22. And then if we increased it to cover the additional emergency medical services, it'd be $2.94. So that was just showing what the change is on no change in levy rate, the max rate, and then I was just throwing out an option to cover additional costs. And again, this is on a pure 100,000 to 100,000 levy rate. And each individual homeowner would have to look and see how it impacted them. Because I just know my personal residence went up by 20%.
Wow.
But, again, it all depends on
Yeah, mine went down just a little bit, but barely, but I can say it went down, so.
So I think that it at least shows you on a 100 to, no change, what the impact would be on a resident's, in taxes.
Ryan, how much of the general supplemental, did you say that we could shift to general basic?
Right now, we are transferring about a little over 7 million from general supplement to general basic. And that at the time was the amount calculated for the budgeted benefits for payroll. And so you could lower that to whatever number you,
So we could cover this shortfall by transferring an additional 73,000 or 911,000? Or we could transfer 73 and have 0 reserves, which doesn't impact general basic reserves,
well,
right?
were you transferring it?
Because right now we have a slight 0.4% deficit in the reserve for general sup. If we zeroed that out,
Right.
we would only need to transfer an additional 73,448
Yeah, in a sense, you'd lower the transfer from general sup.
to lower the transfer, okay. Well, let's do that for now. And that would make that would increase the deficit in general basic by that amount.
Yes.
So let's just cover that now.
Yeah, I'd be in agreement with that, just to get that to 0.
What's the appropriate motion?
But then that would, which is, so if we would make that motion to do that, we would not be increasing the levy, just so everybody's clear, on that general sup to fund those EMS positions. We'd be funding those out of reserves.
Correct. But these are combined for the countywide levy.
Yes, for the
So-
countywide levy.
For the levy rate, it's not,
No, I know, I just,
yeah.
my concern is that if they cap the growth of budgets at 2%, if we don't,
Of that fund, you mean?
well, they're talking of capping all the funds, that next year going forward, it'll be hard to, I mean, it's gonna be hard anyway, but it'll be really hard on those positions if we don't.
Right. So we do nothing, that means we would automatically have to transfer 73,000 from general basic reserves at some point.
Yes, if we
Okay.
did nothing, if that fund goes negative, we would have to address it and correct it as soon as possible.
Okay, well, it's forecasted to do that, so we could just do that.
Yeah,
This top example you have here, that was for the EMS improvement request, wasn't it?
yes.
And that was for 300 and some thousand?
375,000.
So we could transfer everything and leave 375 in there.
Where?
In the general sup, we could, this would be roughly short 5.5 mil, or, 550,000 that we could transfer or use reserves and get down to a negative 375. And then that could be a levy increase on general sup to fund those positions. And then everything else would be out of reserves.
Yeah, I guess we don't have to necessarily target a certain number for general supplemental reserves. What would you recommend, Ryan, just for going through the next fiscal year, would you rather have to make a transfer or now or later?
I would lower the transfer amount now, so we're not budgeting a negative amount. So
Okay.
at the minimum, I would lower that to, make sure we had a, probably maybe even $100,000 cushion, so projected to end up at 100,000
In reserves.
in reserves. And really, all it's doing is shifting it from general supplement to general basic. Whatever we do means if we decrease the, deficit in general supplement, we're just transferring it to increase the general basic.
Okay.
But yeah, but we do have a projected 23% reserve level in general supplement, general basic.
I'm good with that.
So you want to do 173,448 is what your preference was, Ryan?
Yeah,
Okay.
or just lower the transfer amount by that.
You good?
That's fine. Excuse me.
So I'll move to lower the transfer from general sup
Yeah,
by 173,448.
Second. Motion by Ung, seconded by Nelson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. Passes 5-0.
So now the current shortfall in general basic. Can you verify that number?
Michelle, can you put the screen? It would be the shortfall would now be the 626,000 plus the 173. And then the cash balance will be the 9.6 million minus the 173. So that would be, 9 million, 480,000. Which, you see the 20% level is at the 8,361,000. So we're still over $1 million above the 20%.
So to negate what we just did, we need to dedicate 173,448 in general basic reserves to general basic.
Well, that's because by lowering the transfer from general sup, it increases the deficit in general basic, well, then we'll lower the projected ending balance in general basic by that 173,000.
Okay. So the transfer from reserves to come up with a flat tax rate for that fund is now the 173 plus the 625
Yep.
Yes.
that we haven't officially acted on yet, but that is forecasted. You know what I would love is for us to move that, and then next week when we have our super special hearing where everyone comes in with their mailers and says, my tax rates are going up by this amount, we can say, yeah, last week we actually cut that to nothing, so your taxes are not going up right now.
Well, the night is still young, man.
We don't have to do it now. We can wait 5-10 minutes.
Well, so on this real basic, issue here, with the unfilled. How many deputies are paid out of rural basic on rural patrol? And maybe Chad can tell us that. Not to put him on the spot since he's just walking in here, but
I'm here. Go ahead.
how many of the deputies are on the rural
When did
patrol?
you guys decide to talk about this today?
Just now?
Well, somebody said they found out today.
Yeah. That there was an open position. We
Okay.
haven't, we're not freezing any positions today.
When
That's
today
not on the
was it
agenda.
decided that you were going to talk about it? Because nobody called me.
This came up to this afternoon while we're doing the budget review. We can't authorize or
Okay.
deauthorize any positions today.
I'll be more specific. What time today? Was there time to call me that I could have been here? Or you could have warned me ahead of time, or?
About, I guess, what exactly? Freezing, but we're not freezing a position today.
Okay. I just would have appreciated a little heads up. I could have been here, I could have been prepared, I could have certainly answered the questions. If you knew about it at 1 o'clock, I would think you could have called me at 10 after 1. Not you, whoever, Ryan or whoever it is. Just give me a call. I was in my office all day today.
And this is, part of this process is just talking about.
There's things about the position that I don't want to discuss publicly because of why the position was vacated, and some other things. But I'll answer any questions that you have. So if you, I can tell you in the 10 minutes that it took me to drive here, if you cut the position, it will be the position at the courthouse.
How
We're
many
not
positions?
we're not gonna short patrol. We're already short because we have 4 or 5 people in the FTO program right now.
Which is training for new
Deputies,
officers, because we've
yep.
had a lot of
Yep.
retirements and
Yep.
everything else.
So
How many do you know how many are funded from rural basic versus
off the
general
top
basic?
of my head,
or-
I have no idea.
Okay.
And why they're funded from one fund or the other, I don't know.
Well, and the reason that I was moving back to this was that if you look at Iowans for tax relief, for Woodbury County specifically, the rural basic tax levy compared to other counties is actually quite low, and that we're taxing like the general public more. And so my point was, those deputies are serving, whether it's rural communities or unincorporated, but right now
Rural
are,
communities meaning townships?
well, or cities.
Yes.
Towns, yeah,
Yep.
yep, all the above, you know, outside of Sioux City.
Not the folks living outside, incorporated towns or cities.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
but as you've talked before.
And we're looking at, I just sent an email to Joshua yesterday. We're looking at trying to fast track some conversations with the towns and the municipalities. Unfortunately, it won't be for this budget year just because I didn't think it was fair to go to them in the middle of a budget year. It'd be like somebody coming to us and asking us to come up with an extra X amount of dollars in the middle of the budget process. That's not fair. But the numbers that we're looking at are probably somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 for the townships. But again, I think we're going to have to, I won't say negotiate with them, but talk to them. I don't want to hurt any of the townships. And I'm okay talking about a little bit of that tonight because the topic was already, the ice was kind of broken a couple weeks ago. But they all have a statutory code requirement to provide law enforcement for their communities. We have been doing it for free for the last 8-9 years. We are the only county in the 25 counties in Northwest Iowa that do it for free. And I know I'm not going to be a very popular person in the towns for, when these conversations happen. But I think if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, it's fair for them to do their fair
That's-
share for what we are for the service we're providing for them that they are mandated to provide for themselves.
Yes, and that's what, so like, if a sheriff has to come to my house for something, or if law enforcement has to come to my house, who's it gonna be? It's gonna be 99% chance it's gonna be a deputy.
Right.
So, to me, it's unfair that more of that tax burden is on someone, say, in Sioux City, that's paying already for Sioux City PD. Now, a deputy may come to their house or assist or whatever.
Yeah,
but-
the only thing is though, we're responsible for all of the courts, civil processing, and the jail. And the majority of our jail are people from Sioux City.
Sure.
The majority of our civil process is in the city of Sioux City. So I don't think that a city taxpayer is unfairly paying for services of the sheriff's office. Don't think of us as only doing work outside of the city of Sioux City, because that's not at all the case. Most of our civil deputies spend 99% of their time in the city. Evictions, on and on and on and on and on. I mean, I could get you specific numbers, but I don't think anybody that's living in an incorporated, I don't think they're not unfairly taxed to cover the cost of running the sheriff's office. I think that's inaccurate. Where I think the difference is though, and I don't want to pick on any one particular town, but let's just say it's Johnsonville, Woodbury County, which doesn't really exist, but they're a population of 750 people, and we have a 28E that we provide their law enforcement coverage. Right now, Johnsonville isn't paying a dime for law enforcement coverage. Back in the day, 20 years ago or more, most of the communities had their own police officer. It got to a point where that was too expensive for them to do. So in lieu of hiring their own police officer, or a full-time and a part-time, they entered the 28E with the sheriff's office to answer calls for their town. We do that for every community except for Sergeant Bluff, Mobile, and Sioux City, and nobody pays. So I've had my administrative team working on a fair way to charge the communities for that service. And again, they compiled data from 25 area counties, looked at a couple larger counties on the other side of the state that would be more comparable to our size counties. And we think we have a number. We're waiting to have a meeting. We'll invite Ryan to it as well to try and crunch numbers. Just this afternoon, Lieutenant Cleveringa gave me some 2080 mock-ups and stuff like that. So that would be, we're looking at somewhere between 200 and 300,000 that would come into our budget to offset some of the costs for the services that we provide these counties. I've looked at adding, obviously I'd have to come to the board to do that, but looked at adding additional deputies with the funds that we would be getting. But if you're talking about cutting deputies, I would rather use those funds and keep what we have than talk about cutting anybody. Because off the top of my head, the only position that's a deputy position that I think we could maybe cut would be up here but it wouldn't be safe. It won't be safe for the courthouse to do that.
So there was, I think, Matthew Young brought it up that we could maybe transfer this position like to general basic to try to cover
Yeah.
with like reserves or something,
Where that money comes out of,
if we can do that.
for
you know.
me,
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
Right? As long as it doesn't violate some state code or some
Were you gonna say
rule.
something, Michelle?
When you're ready.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of explain the reasoning behind the rural basic and the general basic, as far as the way the sheriff's office is split. Now, in theory, the rural basic would be the deputies who cover the township areas, and the general basic would be the people who cover the incorporated areas, which would mean the Anthons, the Mobiles, the Correctionvilles, all of the incorporated areas. And the reason is that the rural basic tax levy that the county applies is applied with a township levy. It's not applied with a city levy when you're figuring out the total tax rate. So the theory behind it is that your general basic people would be patrolling or primarily working within the incorporated areas of all of the different cities within the county, and your rural basic people would be the ones that are patrolling the rural. And I know you have a mix, they all patrol everything, so it's a juggling game. And I know those numbers have always kind of been a little bit fluid, where if money is needed in one or the other, it's okay to change that general ledger line so that the taxing authority is in the right bucket.
Yes, and where you take it from in the bucket makes no difference to me at all whatsoever. As long as we're just transparent with the public and what we're doing, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I think that rather than move it to general basic, and I guess if it's for a year and you're working on agreements, then that's maybe okay. My whole thing is if you leave it in rural basic, and if you go out to the public and say, hey, we're either gonna get rid of a deputy on patrol, or you're gonna pay another $7 per 100,000, I can pretty much tell you what most of them are gonna say, right? And it's gonna be, I'll pay the $7 per 100,000. So that's just my opinion. But I guess if there's a compromise that we could keep the levy the same and we fund this position out of general basic, if that meets muster, and then in a year, if we can get some agreements where we have some money coming in from some of these rural areas that would afford that, we could always move it back or whatever.
Well, and again, I don't know if we want to get into this discussion right now, but part of what we're gonna try to get a meeting with Joshua or somebody from the county attorney's offices. They either do it themselves, or if they enter an agreement with us, I don't know what other option they have. They either go hire their own, or they have the sheriff's office do it. I don't think the city of Sioux City is gonna enter a 2080 agreement with Correctionville.
Well, some have tried to share like with Mobile in the past, and that's never worked out. Like Lawton
Yeah, and they
Mobile
could
would
do
share
that.
it. Yeah,
they could do that.
Yep.
If they're a neighboring community, and they could, and they might, and
Yep.
that's okay. I know that has been done in township, in some of the smaller, I think Anthony and Correctionville
Shared
a
at
long
one
time ago
time.
used
Yep.
to share a full-time position, and they split it 50-50.
Yep.
So they could do that. In today's world, it's just expensive, and we're already in place, and we can do it. So
Well, there's a
we're
movement
in no way, I want to make sure that I get this out there to the townships and the mayors that are going to watch this. We're not trying to hurt them, gouge them, or anything.
Yep.
We've come up with what we think is a very fair way to calculate it. We do want to talk. I want to get with Ryan. He's the better numbers guy, and have him look at our data and give us feedback on whether
Well, I know that-
Chad's math is good math or bad math or makes sense or not.
Well,
So
I know
that
Mobile is-
when we go to every one of these, we can lay it out in front of them. Here's how we came up with this number. We're gonna apply it equally across the board to any township that has us do their law enforcement. And what we want to do is like a per capita rate. We looked at Mobille's. You mentioned Mobile. Their budget, I think, for their police department's $450,000. It comes out to $380 per resident.
And they're discussing even foregoing their own, that they can't afford. I know it's been a contentious
Well, we can
issue
do
there
it
for
for much
months,
cheaper.
but.
We
yeah.
can do it much cheaper.
Yeah.
But any township that does it, they lose control then.
Yeah.
Because then they don't get a guaranteed time or whatever else. Go ahead.
I just want to confirm that you're referring to towns, not townships, because townships have, they have to
I'm sorry.
levy for fire, but not for law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean like Correctionville, Lawton, Bronson, Pearson, Anthon, Odo, Hornick, Sloan, Salix. If I missed you, I'm sorry. I think I hit them all. Yes, but thank you. If I'm using the wrong term, I mean town.
Yeah, well, my first reaction was, you know, has anyone talked to the sheriff's office about this?
I heard that. I appreciate that. And the answer was no.
Okay.
That's why I was surprised.
Well, I think if this is just, you know, left as is and it's not filled, you know, the monies will go into the reserves.
The opening
Rural
that we
basic,
have
and
right
we'll
now
have-
will not be filled at least until July 1.
Okay. Okay. So the 10.5% reserve level is not
Is
a
that
particular
counting, let
concern.
me, hold on one second. Is that counting the person that we've offered the job that's going to start April? Because technically, as we stand right today, we have 2 openings.
Okay.
We've offered him a position that will start April. April, sometime in April. The other opening, the earliest I could foresee offering a position would be sometime in early July. And outside this meeting, I could discuss with one of you or 2 of you at a time why that is.
Okay.
Well,
To
yeah, and I
answer your
think- Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think, yeah, you know, the 10.5% is probably fine for now. I mean, just hearing that. But, you know, for the ones that are listening in the towns, I mean, here we were talking about a position that, you know, for trying to help balance our budget, which would hurt the towns in turn. So if they are listening, I mean, it would only behoove them to, you know, think about this and, you know, hopefully maybe gain some, you know, deputy patrols.
Yeah, I'm very confident that our numbers that we're looking at, we would be able to do it 6 times cheaper than what Moville's doing it. Now, they're not gonna have the same coverage.
Yep.
You know, and they also don't get to call me and tell me how to police Moville. And that's what a lot of communities, that's why they choose to have their own. It's unfair to pick on Moville, but Johnsonville, the Johnsonville mayor wants to be able to call the chief and tell him exactly where he's gonna have cars run radar and do whatever else. They don't get that luxury. Everything would be spelled out what they get in that 28E, but there'll be a fee for it. And neighboring counties, there are some neighboring counties that they provide 24/7 law enforcement for a particular town who that's what they want. And that gets very expensive, very fast. So, but I think we've come up, and it wasn't me, it was Captain Sands and Lieutenant Cleveringa came up with what I think is a very fair price point, fair to the town and fair to the county taxpayers.
So yeah, it sounds like we just need to try to fund this for, you know, get us another year. And then
The other thing that
we can have something brokered.
where, Ryan, you might know this, but where are we projecting revenue to be over what we're utilizing, what number of, what are we using for a revenue number, and where are we gonna be at over that for this current fiscal year, which will carry, that money, if we're over, it's gonna carry over.
Are you looking at federal?
Yep.
We budgeted about 4.2 million and we're gonna get, right now, projecting about 6 million.
Okay. So as just a reminder that's there. Now, for next fiscal year 27, we're gonna have a full year at that new rate. And I know we bumped it up, but that, I think, to 6.5, but if you do the math, that we're gonna be over that as well. Probably considerably over it. So, if that eases any concern about dipping into reserves and stuff, because I know you guys have a hard job. I'm not, in no way am I minimizing that, but if you have to take from reserves, I'm pretty again, he's the budget guy, but our revenue is gonna be, I'm confident it's gonna be over the projected revenue.
And I just want to insert that there is no state mandate on the reserve level. It is a local, they say follow local policies. And when I looked into it, Woodbury County's policy just states a 20% level on general basic. There's no policy on rural. But if any fund goes negative, it needs to be immediately brought and
Sure.
corrected, so.
Sure. Okay.
Any other questions about the positions or openings or why they're open or not or anything like that for me?
How many were on your list?
I'll talk to you
Oh,
afterwards.
okay, that's fine. I don't have anything unless you guys.
Don't be shy, I'll answer your question.
Well, I'll just, well, I don't have a question, more of a statement. I would say, I received this information tonight, an hour before the meeting, because you asked, you had an opening statement and a question. This was brought up, I brought this up tonight for discussion only, and so I would not have acted upon any of this. This was just for discussion. So I think the board has built a rapport with you.
Absolutely.
To know
That's
that
why
we
I
would
was,
not act
that's why I was
hastily.
frustrated.
That's fine,
and
right.
surprised and
Sure.
taken a little bit by surprise. I'm thinking, well, if they knew about this today, why didn't
Right.
anybody call me?
We would've,
I would've,
right.
okay,
Right,
well,
we
good.
would've.
I'm glad to hear that.
We would have.
And so if I came in a little
You did.
hot under the collar and frustrated, I apologize. I don't think I said anything offensive. I
No.
go back and watch the video.
No,
If
you
I
didn't say
did,
anything
I
offensive.
apologize.
No.
But as you all know me, I tend to, I try not to be offensive.
Right.
Don't really worry too much about hurting feelings, but if I hurt anybody's feelings, I
No
will
feelings hurt.
apologize. But
Just good to clarify.
I was taken a little back because I'm thinking it's not like these guys to
Right.
do something behind our back.
Sure.
So-
No, I was just bringing it up for just discussion, right?
Well,
I'm a green hat, let's discuss it, but until there's official
Yep.
motion.
Well, I'm glad you
always
did.
say.
I'm glad you did so we could discuss it. And if you didn't know about it ahead of time, then there's nothing we could do. But even if you knew about it 5 minutes before the meeting, next time I would just ask you to call me and I'll
That's
get
fair.
down here as quick as I can.
That's fair.
Okay?
Yep.
So, but no, I've always appreciated our open and frank dialogues, and that's why I was taken a little bit aback by it. So we'll, just like usual, we'll work through this, and I think we'll be better for it on the other side.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other
Thank you.
questions for Chad? So is it, I guess we can leave this, the rural basic as is for now, if the board is comfortable eating into those reserves, or I guess it's an option. We can't do anything on the secondary roads in that fund, but that one position could be moved to general basic if we would rather chew up those reserves. But I guess what you just said is if we dip down too low in rural basic, that money would just come from general basic anyway
Correct.
for reserves. So, just good at leaving it? Good? Okay. So we just have the one transfer from general sup to general basic. Anything else for the good of the cause on the budget review?
Were we okay making a transfer today from general basic reserves? And obviously, if we find other savings in future weeks, we pare back our transfer of reserves.
That's fine.
So Ryan, if we transfer the 625 plus the 173 tonight, that covers the shortfall in general basic, correct?
Correct.
So I'll move to transfer $799,280.
No, there'd be no transfer.
No,
No, it's just, we lower the transfer from general sup, and then that shortfall then becomes used out of reserves.
okay, we don't have to motion for it to be used out of reserves.
Not at this point.
No, that'll just naturally occur.
Yeah, because at the end, you authorize the budget, the the Woodbury County's financial policy says to have a balanced budget, but the Board of Supervisors can then, if they so desire, use reserves. And that would be when you approve the final budget. But for
So-
tonight, what you would, I don't know if we've actually made the motion and approved it of lowering general sup by 173,000, whatever that exact amount was. I don't know.
We
if
approve that.
You
yeah.
did approve. So then right now, what that is doing is general basics projected ending reserves will be 100,000.
Yeah.
And then the general basic, or general supplemental reserves will be about 100,000. General basic will be about 9.4 million, which is still $1 million above the 20% policy for Woodbury County.
Yeah, we're at 1.1 to 2, yeah.
I think Matthew was just, and he may correct me if I'm wrong, was just wanting to have something that when folks walk in here next week with their letter that we were gonna raise the levy 30%, that he can show them that in fact the levy was not getting raised at all. Is that correct? Or is that fair to
Yes.
say?
And I think we can still do that. If we can't technically allocate reserves right now, we could still make a motion to signal our intention to cover any shortfall in general basic with general basic reserves.
I would agree with that, Matthew.
And I don't know if, yeah, at a certain point, if you, because right now, what's in the budget officially is the max levy.
Right.
And I don't know if you say tonight or next week that you're officially changing the levy rate to.
I don't, can we do that officially?
So, just for future reference, if your intent and you can come to a consensus that you want the maximum dollar amount to be a certain amount, you can set it as that for the letter that we mail out, so that it'll show the lower amount on the letter, as opposed to putting the maximum, which we always look at the maximum so you know how much will be coming out of reserves. But if you knew as a board that you're just gonna keep lowering it, you're kind of giving the public this high number that causes frustration when you know that you're gonna lower it. So if you come to that consensus ahead of time before that letter goes out. So right now, you can lower the amount, clear up until April 30th, or when our budget hearing is for that final hearing. And I know you're wanting to prepare for next week to say where the levy is at. So I guess if you want to say that it's going to come from reserves and right now a certain number is plugged in for the amount of property tax revenue, so the motion probably would be to reduce the amount of property revenue so that the levy would be the levy that you desire. Because the property revenue is what's on that notice, is how much revenue we're gonna receive from property taxes.
And I think we would have done that. I'm not sure we knew the exact reserve levels we would have by covering at the point of the letter. We might have, but I don't know if we knew exactly where our reserve stood. So now that we know, we have 23% even after covering it, and we're above our 20% target policy. I think we should make a motion to signal that, even if we pare it back after finding more savings.
And I don't know the exact, dollar amount that would require. I could bring that forward next week if you,
The dollar amount that would be required, I thought it was,
well, I know what the levy rate should be, but I don't know how much of a difference that is between what the max levy is currently in dollars.
I thought that was the 625 plus the 173. No? I mean, the worksheet has the same tax rate for FY '26 and '27 here, and You show,
But, yeah, we'll say, maybe I did it incorrect, because right now, what the tax levy in the budget is the max levy rate, which would be at a higher, revenue amount than what I have showed here. I, maybe made the assumption that what I'm showing here is assuming that we didn't change the rate.
well, that's what the worksheet says, no change in levy rate at the top that you gave us. So what are we talking about?
What went out on the mailing has a different rate. But what's on this sheet is a no rate change. So there would be an actual difference between, because like 2 weeks ago, I showed two different summaries, one at the max levy rate and one with no change.
Can I
The-
try to help a little bit?
Yeah.
So the no current change in levy rate is encompassing all of the revenue, not just property tax revenue. And the statement that went out is only showing the property tax revenue. And so I think the dollar amount that we're missing right now is what dollar amount of property tax is gonna generate the levy that's desired. And that's the piece that we need to know how much to reduce the property tax revenue line to create the levy that's desired. One line, would you
Right.
agree? One line that needs to be changed for general basic and one line that needs to be changed for general supplemental.
Actually, general basic will not change because we're
Oh.
at the max. It'll be general supplement and rural basic that will change.
The general supplemental will change, which will change the urban resident amount, though. That one, I guess, we need to look at general supplemental and rural basic.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is on this worksheet, the current, where it says current revenue budget, those lines for general sup and real basic are too high?
That is showing it as if what's officially in the budget is higher than these numbers. Because the official budget shows the max levy rate, which is the 3 point.
If you want to recess for 5 minutes or so, we can come up with a number.
Actually, I do have another sheet if you want to receive this.
Would receive. Motion by Nelson, seconded by Bittenger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. Pass 4-0. Yeah, one for Dave. That's fine. Dan's got one here.
So on this, it does show the max rate of the general supplement of 2.79387. That's what went out on the mailing. The no change levy rate is the 2.59945. So I do have, if we did change it, the max tax revenue is for general supplement is 16,895,956. If we changed it so the overall county-wide rate did not change, the general supplemental tax revenue would be 15,720,173. So those, in a sense, I do have the number there if you want to reduce the general supplement tax revenue from the 16.9 million to the 17,720,000. That would lower the general supplement rate from 2.79 to 2.59, which would then make the total county-wide rate the same as last year. And then the same thing in rural basic. The mailing went out with a 3.95 levy rate, or 6,456,000. To lower it to so the total rural rate does not change. The tax revenue would be 3,943,952. And then that would produce the levy rate with no change. So I would, if you want to, change the revenue by the difference between those two, then that would set the levy rate at a no change.
If you wanted to just make a motion to reduce the property tax asking to the no change number as opposed to doing the math, you can do that as well. It'll be clear enough in the minutes.
So that would be 1.1 million approximately in general sup and about 2.5 to cover rural basic.
Yes, approximately.
Say that again, Matthew.
1,175,783 to cover general sup and 2,512,512 to cover rural basic. And this would leave our general basic reserves still around what you have here at about 23%.
Yes, because the summary I showed was assuming that we left the levy rates the same. So if you vote that, then it would equal what my summary shows, because I was making the assumption that that's what you guys wanted. And so if you make this change, it would not impact the summary I showed at all.
Okay. So Michelle, we can actually motion to, even though it's not a budget certification, to change the rate? Or are you saying just to target or change to the no change in this sheet?
I would recommend just making a motion to reduce the property tax revenue by the amount, reduce the property tax revenue,
By the combined amount?
yeah, by the difference, or reduce the property tax revenue to 15,721,73 for general, you'll do one for general supplemental and one for rural basic. By reducing the property tax revenue that's already within the budget, you will in effect create the levy that is the same as last year's levy.
Any heartburn on this?
I don't. I think it's the right move. All things considered. Yeah. I support it.
I'll move to reduce the property tax revenue to 15,720,173 in general supplemental and 3,943,952 in rural basic,
Second.
setting a no change flat tax for FY27.
Motion by Ung, seconded by Bittenger. Any further discussion or questions on that motion?
This is only for the countywide tax rate, correct?
The supplement would affect the urban tax rate, and then the rural would affect because the countywide rate is general basic, general supplement, and debt service. And then rural residents have the rural basic on top of that. So in a sense, it's the county-wide and then the rural.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Do you want to inform the group next week, Matthew? Is that
What group? Oh, sure.
all of our fans that show up?
Sure.
Okay. You tell them that their tax rate's flat.
Can we generate new sheets, Michelle, so we can dramatically hold up new sheets and be like, this is the new one? Oh, sorry.
We could probably have handouts at the,
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't be a bad thing. Print a few sheets off
Honestly,
them,
yeah.
because I'm sure there'll be some people that show up. So, any other discussion on the budget for the good of the cause? All right, item 10, reports on committee meetings. Dave?
I only have, excuse me, I only have one for SHIP, Siouxland Human Investment Partnership. They just finished their strategic action plan going out for the next couple of years, which is good to see that finally be finalized and formalized. And then second, it's good to see different entities in the county. SHIP is, as you know, with every organization, you have years of income surplus and income decline. Nothing crazy, but the expenditures for SHIP matched. Income is down 7% year to date, and it's the normal ebbs and flows, but also expenditures are down 7% to match the decrease. So they're not overspending while income is not increasing. So just good fiscal management there. So that's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. Matthew, anything? Kent, do you have anything?
Nope.
All right, item 11, citizen concerns. Michelle?
So I just wanted to give an elections update. So last Friday was the end of our county filing period for county candidates for the primary that's coming up on June 2nd. So I did post all of the candidates who filed on the Facebook page. Today is the first day that individuals can request an absentee ballot to be mailed. It's 70 days from our election. However, we do not mail the absentee ballots until 20 days before the election. So we received one request today. I do have a mailer that's going out that's going to give all this information to the public, so we'll probably be starting to get a little bit busier as far as elections go as we move forward towards the primary election.
I was asked yesterday, and I didn't know the answer, but so I'll put you on the spot, and maybe you'll remember, or maybe you'll know. If a candidate, if one of the parties in the county was going to have a special convention to put a candidate on the ballot, isn't there a deadline for when those conventions have to take place by?
Yeah, so a candidate would not be on the primary, that would be
Correct.
for the
This is
general
for the general,
election.
yep,
So
yep.
first we'll look at write-in votes, and an individual would win by a write-in if they have 35% of the votes written in for an individual from the last election that had a candidate on. That means that for example, for Supervisor District 4, we had no one file for Republicans or Democrats. They would need over 1,000 write-in votes, which would be a pretty big write-in campaign for someone to have. So yes, those would have to be nominated by convention of the parties. I'll bring those dates back. There's a couple of different dates that it's a little unclear right now. So I'll bring
Sure.
those dates back next week so that we can have that out there.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other citizen concerns? Board concerns? Dave? Matthew? I apologize, I did not bring this up last week. Dan and I both forgot, but we had a conference call last week with Timothy Whipple, who is the attorney that's been representing Woodbury County and the other counties, 7 or 8 other counties across Iowa on the carbon pipeline issue. And so there was a conference call with supervisors from all those counties, and Dan and I were on that call, just kind of getting an update. You know, we had a trial back in October that judicial review that did not go our way. The judge ultimately kind of sided with the pipeline companies. So what's going on is that Summit Carbon, in their initial permit, the only way they could get a permit to build in Iowa is they had to have a permit in South Dakota and in North Dakota. Well, then South Dakota has passed a law that they do not allow eminent domain for these types of projects. And so now what Summit is saying is that they should still get the permit because South Dakota has made it impossible for them to get a permit, and that's no fault of their own. And so they want the IUC to just kind of forgo that whole portion of it. But now the problem that they have since then is that the North Dakota Supreme Court has struck down. North Dakota had used eminent domain as far as like mineral rights on certain people where they're going to pump this into the ground. They had taken those people's mineral rights, and the North Dakota Supreme Court has said, no, that's unconstitutional. So now they don't have a permit to store it in North Dakota either. And so they really are kind of in a pickle here because they needed 2 permits and that they now have 0. The other thing that he talked about is that the main crux of their argument about how this was beneficial to the public was that on the basis of climate change and that they were going to be taking the CO2 and putting it in the ground. Well, now they don't have a place to put it in the ground. So the heavy portion of their argument about protecting the climate has been thrown out because they don't have a place to store it. They're still, arguing from Timothy's best, he thinks 3 years probably before this will all get settled out, or that would probably be the earliest that Summit may be able to keep their permits to build. There were a lot of questions about, well, surely the IUC, okay, so we gotta talk about the phase 2 now.
Phase 2, right?
So because of these changes in South Dakota and North Dakota, they now want to pump this across Nebraska and see if they can store it in Wyoming. And so if you've been following along here in Woodbury County, they've actually reversed the flow. So originally it was going to come under the river and go north through the county. Now it's actually going to come south through the river. They've tripled the size of the pipe because we're going to be like actually a main transmission line here. But that nullified the easements that they had with landowners previously. So they're out trying to get easements. And the problem that they're having is that, what did he say? When they got their first permit, they had almost 80%,
80%,
somewhere in there,
roughly,
70-some percent
something, high 70s,
of
yeah.
easements.
Yeah.
Well, now they have less than 20. Oh, no, yeah. And so one of the questions that was raised was surely the IUC wouldn't grant eminent
Correct.
domain again
Right,
for a
20%.
project that only has 20% participation. And most people would say probably not, but the problem is that this is an unelected board and it's a very political thing. And so it's going to be, I would certainly hope that we don't grant eminent domain to a project that has 20% voluntary, participation. But that's going to be tested yet with IUC, and that's going to be very, very interesting to watch. But there are legislative fixes in the works, but it's pretty stalled out in the Senate right now, and the governor's not too keen on doing much about it either. I think it's great that these counties have banded together to try to protect property rights and have really stayed in tune with what's going on. It's just sad that we've had to deal with this and that it's been just a drain on resources and time for a lot of these counties, but.
Right. So Mark, let me add, there's 3 things, or you want to go
I
ahead?
was just going to comment
Go
on
ahead.
this.
Go ahead, Chad.
I hope that even if they have 99%, sign up, that they don't use eminent domain
All right.
for a project that's for private gain.
Yeah.
Correct.
So even because as you said that, I'm like, well, yeah, of course, there's only 20%, but who cares if it's 90?
Yeah.
They still shouldn't be using eminent domain for a project that's for private gain. So I think they should be put on notice that regardless of what their percentage is, it shouldn't be used at all. I hope, I would encourage you to continue to do everything that you can do to fight for this, because it's certainly just the tip of the iceberg of taking away people's rights to their property. So I encourage you 100%.
Thank you.
One thing I want to bring up is, Mr. Whipple mentioned, there's 3 questions that still have to be answered, and they're hoping to get this remanded back to the district court because it was remanded on March 5th back down to the IUC. But the 3 questions are, do counties have the right to enforce their own safety ordinances and create safety ordinances? That was number 1. That's not been issued. Second all is the definition, is this truly a common good public use? And then third, road permits. I forget Mark on the call, but the main concern is that Summit has said that they don't have to get road permits from the county engineers, that they will in essence do what they want. And so we're hoping that the district court will pick this up and actually enforce that they have to get road permits from the counties to do the infrastructure work. Is that right? Remember, is that what you
Yes,
said?
and
Correct?
Laura can maybe talk about this, but
Yeah.
the reason is that I think by Iowa code, counties have to allow public entities
Yeah.
permits to use the right of way, but we do not have to allow private entities.
Correct. Yep.
And so there are counties that are already talking about, well, Summit is a private entity, so we're just gonna deny their permits to use the road, which we have the right to do for any private citizen.
Right.
Well, now they're saying, well, you don't have any jurisdiction over us, we'll just come drill through your road whenever we want, whenever we want. So,
Yeah.
and I think that that's gonna be the next legal challenge
Correct,
too.
yeah.
Dan talked about the safety ordinances. So the counties like Audubon County that had passed the safety ordinances, the judges have told them they have to remove those. Well, interestingly enough, and I haven't talked to Dan Priestley, but Woodbury County actually has pipeline zoning already on the books.
Right.
And ours is old enough, and that because it wasn't done in like a direct attack on the carbon pipeline, that we're actually fine because it wasn't like political. So our ordinance can stay. I don't know how it affects what Summit or anybody else would try to do. I just find that kind of funny. But the other counties have been ordered that they have to remove their ordinance, and that they cannot have ordinances, Dan said, that relate to safety, public safety. And it's baffling.
Which was stated that, I think it is in the PHMSA code, says that counties
Yeah.
have to, I don't know if it's have to, but have the ability to create safety ordinances.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to go back on that, and say that counties can't enforce the federal law that says we're allowed to create safety ordinances. Yeah.
So it's
I
a
don't know,
mess between the federal government, the state government, multiple levels of courts, this IUC commission that's made up of appointees. It is such a quagmire. And anyway, all of it just to take people's land. But anyway, thanks for jumping on that, Dan. And the nice thing about sharing with other counties is it's not a big expense to Woodbury County, but we share that cost, and it's for the right reasons. So we will continue to keep people updated on that as we know more. And don't be afraid to call your legislators and demand that they get something done. So, but unless there's any other board,
The only thing I have, I hope that the Iowa General Assembly is listening to us. Once again, I don't know about you guys, I got many phone calls and constituents asking me about the max property tax. And we told them how much we have to pay, and they were livid that the Woodbury County tries to do our best to be fiscal conservative and save the money, use it, and put it towards things that matter. And we had to spend money on this. And so, once again, to all our constituents, please contact your elected officials and tell them to revoke this. So that's all I have.
seeing no other concerns, we are adjourned.